How excited should fantasy managers be about Drake May? He's on a ton of waiver wires. What are we thinking here with Drake May? Is this a massive addition for fantasy managers looking for production at the quarterback position?
I'm not sure if you see the wall behind me.
No, where are you? You're in the middle of the country.
Or the shirt that I'm wearing. But I honestly have to recuse myself from this question because of how excited I am about Drake May as a Patriots fan. And I'll tell you what, it was nice to see a couple touchdown passes. Plus, he ran 5 times. But Theo, give us the unbiased take on it.
Okay, so unbiased, Drake May is the top addition at the quarterback position by a mile this week. Even if you're in a shallow league and there's guys who are, had a bunch more starts under their belt, Drake May showed you everything that you want to see as a fantasy manager. He had the 2 interceptions, he had the fumble, but Coop, in my leagues, the touchdown passes count for a lot more than the points you lose on interceptions. So he gives you the 3 touchdown passes. One of them was a 40-yarder to Kayshon Boutte, hits Demario Douglas, hits Hunter Henry. So 3 touchdown passes in his debut, and he does that for an offense that's been completely stuck in the mud. This week, Drake May gets the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have one of the worst secondaries in football right now. Drake May is a quarterback streaming option in single QB leagues this week against the Jaguars. And you bring up the 5 rushing attempts, 38 rushing yards, actually led the New England Patriots this week. So, this is a guy where we saw everything we needed to see. This is why they drafted him, why they used the number 3 overall pick. He's big, he's athletic, he's got scrambling ability, and he's got a cannon. They're going to get the positive game flow for him. They're going to be trailing a ton. So, yeah, I'm on that Drake May tip.
And it's a good matchup this week versus the Jags, who have just been the leakiest, defense passing against all year with Andre Cisco and Antonio Johnson back there at safety. It's a good spot. So I will say, and, the Patriots just went from bad to fun bad. There's a couple kinds of bad out there, right? We've seen very bad teams, but we've also seen fun bad teams like the Blake Bortles Jaguars. So the best case scenario is Patriots lose all these games, get a left tackle next year, but Drake May looks good. That would be an ideal world, right? I'll throw out a couple names before we move on to running back. Trevor Lawrence has dropped in a bunch of leagues. He is now playing the Patriots this week. So if you need a streamer, looked a little bit better, had about 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 touchdown passes dropped this week. So he's at least throwing the ball well, right? And then the last name you got to think about is Bo Nix, who Bo Nix quietly also running the ball a decent amount. He's been pretty conservative with the ball, not really turning it over a ton, but not really taking a lot of chances. It's death by 1,000 cuts. As you know, with Joe Lombardi, last year they led all teams in passes to the running back. This year they're second, so they're still doing what they do with the dink and dunk. But Bo Nix, at least he's willing to run a decent amount, and that creates an okay floor. So that's it for QBs on me.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Running back, though, this is one of the most interesting weeks of running back on the waiver wire. You have a big combination of backs breaking down like they do every year, but you also have younger backs getting opportunities, some handcuffs getting opportunities. We saw on Monday Night Football with Ray Davis. There's a ton of names out there. Which running back are you most interested in adding? Let's say you had the number 1 waiver priority, or let's say you wanted to really spend significant fab this week. Which is that running back you're going after?
Absolutely. Now, first and foremost, I know that most of our people that watch this show are in deeper leagues. They're serious gamers, but Tyrone Tracy still technically rostered in only about 50% of leagues in all platforms. So he's number 1 with a bullet, 50% of fab, everything. I mean, you could catch lightning in a bottle here. And the Bengals defense looked better with BJ Hill and Sheldon Rankins back. And the Giants couldn't run the ball well. Guess what? They threw it to him 6 times. He caught all 6. So, I mean, that's the kind of the Alvin Kamara cheat code is that, when he can't run, they just throw it to him. And this is a converted wide receiver. So Tyrone Tracy has to be the number 1 guy. If you're looking for guys to play for you right now, it really depends where you're at, Theo. I break my waiver article down into waiver ads for everything, which is Tyrone Tracy, and then stashes and then streamers. For streamers this week, and I know you do this something very similar in your article. For streamers this week, Ty Chandler has to be on the radar, right? As a guy you throw right in there. Tyler Algier went from getting only 10 or 20% of the snaps to getting 40% of the snaps. That coincided, Theo, with 3 weeks ago an AC joint issue for Bijan Robinson, which, as we know with running backs, is a contact injury, and guys like Dalvin Cook have struggled with it for years. And basically what they do a lot of times is you play through it, but they try not running you against the brick wall. Tyler Allgeier's getting those carries, and he looks pretty good doing it. Of course, the other one, you got to watch the foot injury for Ramondre Stevenson, but Antonio Gibson was already getting half the work. He's got 7 touches in every game. With the games where he started, the games where he didn't start, he's got at least 7 touches in all those games, so Antonio Gibson's got to be on that radar as well. And then I know as far as stashes go, there are some deep cuts we're looking at. We've been looking at Braylon Allen all year. We've been looking at Ray Davis all year, and he finally got the start this week. And I'm sure you got some other deep cuts that people got to know about, right?
I mean, I think Kamani Vidal showed us what we wanted to see, and that Gus Edwards, gets the catch, gets the touchdown catch, which is great. But I think also with Kamani Vidal, you get the two-way ability, you've got the size, athleticism, and now he's one J.K. Dobbins injury away from having really a borderline RB1 role in a running back heavy approach. Vidal is one where if you are really set at the running back position and you want somebody to just stash, I love that one. I think he's really interesting. We talked about Isaac Arendo. Isaac Arendo had the 76-yard run. This is a 4.33 40 high speed score player. Is he a perfect back? Absolutely not. But can they do some Raheem Mostert-like things with him in a limited sample size if Jordan Mason is unable to go? And we're recording this on Tuesday. Jordan Mason was in like the non-contact jersey on Monday, so we'll see what he's able to go.
And let me throw in there on that one real quick. That's another AC joint. So with Jordan Mason, same thing that Bijan's been dealing with. And even if he's a go, that's what they do a lot of times is they say, hey, it's goal line here. We got a guy with an injured shoulder. Let's maybe run the other guy here. So something to keep in mind, even if Jordan Mason is a go.
Yeah, and I love that. And I think a lot of people push back on the Garendo stuff. But for me, it's if I need a dart throw running back start or a flex start, then I want a guy who has the juice. And with Garendo, all it takes is like 2 touches and he can find it. This guy is seriously bursty when he's coming out of that backfield. So I like that one. We're talking about a super deep cut. Talk to me about Audric Estime, Coop.
Yeah, so I mean, again, we want to look around at these teams, not only that don't have efficient backs, but are willing to run kind of like live tryouts. Like, look at what Sean Payton's doing with these wide receivers. Cortland Sutton starts, right? Or the pass catchers in general. You've got these games where Devon Vele comes out and gets 8 targets, then he gets hurt, and then he ends up a healthy scratch. You got a game where Greg Dulcich comes out, gets 8 targets. Now he's a healthy scratch. For the first time this week, they let Devon Vele, Troy Franklin, and Lucas Kroll all play 60% of the snaps. And next week, it might be different guys. It might be Marvin Mims. They're kind of rotating guys in and out and trying to see who's going to be part of this team for the future. That, to me, is the perfect formula for Audric Estime to come in now that he's healthy and get a look. And what happens if you do catch lightning in the bottle here with this guy that the new regime drafted themselves, right? They've already been willing to move on from a lot of these guys. The quarterback, the kicker, the Samaje Perine, like a lot of these old regime guys, Jerry Jeudy, they're gone. So nobody's safe when Sean Payton comes in and he wants to mix and match. So I want to get a look at that. Absolutely. And another one, I guess, if you're going for deep stashes, guys like Blake Corum finally getting a little run. Trey Benson actually started the second half after a very inefficient half for James Conner. And when you talk about guys like Trey Benson and Kamani Vidal, you got to remember who they're behind, right? I would hate to see J.K. Dobbins get hurt again, but he's a routinely injured player. James Conner has not one time played every single game in the season. He has always missed a game due to injury. Got to factor that in at this stage. They run hard, they play aggressively, and that can happen. So that's a lot of names out there going as deep as you want to go, and that's how we do it on the show. We'll talk about Tyrone Tracy, who's rostered in 50% of leagues on Yahoo and ESPN, probably 60 or 70 on Sleeper, and we'll talk about guys like Audric Estime who are rostered in 0% on something.
One running back we've got to talk about, though, Coop, is that's giving people a lot of confusion here. Sean Tucker. He has 27 snaps, 192 yards, and 2 touchdowns. This is going to be the best game of his career, but Rachaad White could miss more time. Bucky Irving, like we talked about Bucky week 1 here, and Bucky looks fantastic as well. Bucky gives you 105 combined yards, gives you a touchdown. But Sean Tucker, this is one where should people add him or should people let somebody else bid on him? Your thoughts on a player who looked incredible, albeit in a small sample size?
I'll tell you, I mean, these are guys, I mean, obviously in Dynasty, if he got dropped, you add this guy. And maybe in your deeper leagues, you do, especially if you get somebody that gets added to the IR late in the week and you just want to throw somebody on there to take a peek. The thing about the best game of his career, Theo, is that there were a lot of guys we said that about before. I looked at David Johnson, catching a pass and taking it 76 yards and then running a kick for a touchdown as a rookie, as an undrafted rookie for the Cardinals. And I said to myself, well, that was probably the best game of his career. Turns out it wasn't. Turns out that guy had a ton of good games left to play. So with Sean Tucker, people were high on him. He fell in the draft not because of talent issue, but because of a potential heart issue that he ended up getting cleared on. Not heart as in like he doesn't have that dog in him. I mean, like he actually had a heart condition that was that a lot of teams did not clear him to play and weren't going to draft him. So I mean, these are the kind of deep stabs you got to think about. I'm not going to rule it out at all. Obviously, though, if you need somebody to start this week, go for a Ty Chandler or an Antonio Gibson who could potentially have the bulk of the role versus a guy where the coach came out and used the word three-headed monster himself, which is not ideal. You don't want to hear the coach say three-headed monster with Bucky Irving and Rashad White and now Sean Tucker. So, I mean, that's it on Tucker.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's sort of like with Tucker, it's like the whole argument that he's going to completely get put away. Coaches have eyes too. They love them. When a guy breaks out, it's sort of like, hey, maybe we should have been giving this guy more work. Coop, it's also a really interesting week at the wide receiver position. We have way fewer names to discuss than running back. Let's start out with first your shallow league additions. Like who's like your no-brainer ads at the wide receiver spot?
Yeah, so I mean, like, again, I was shocked to see that on a site like Yahoo that Josh Downs didn't get picked up in over 50% of leagues, which is crazy to me. Half the leagues out there aren't picking this guy up after 9 and then 12 targets. And then now this week he had 9 again. So this is your last chance if you're in one of those leagues. Like, go out and get this fella. The Packers wide receivers also, a lot of them hit the wire. Romeo Doubs also got dropped this week. Did you see what the Cardinals did? The Cardinals PA guy?
No.
So when Romeo Doubs scored his first touchdown, he played the song, I don't want to work. I just want to bang.
That's funny.
That's a troll.
That is
it was a good troll move until Romeo Doubs
scored twice.
Until he scored twice. And then the second time they didn't have another funny song queued up and it wasn't.
You know what happens if you F around? Sometimes you find out.
Yeah.
Especially you don't want to mess. You don't want to tug on. You don't want to mess with Jordan Love, period. Right. The guy's just incredible.
They didn't have enough funny songs queued up for the multiple touchdown game. But those are the top guys. I will also mention that I was surprised to see Juju Smith-Schuster. Still 33% of leagues only rostered.
Yeah.
So those are the top dogs. What about the guys that are either spot starts or deeper cuts?
Okay, so for me, I think if you're looking for like longevity and you're looking to ride the Drake May train, it's Pop Douglas. So I think a lot of us waited for Jalen Polk for weeks and weeks and weeks, thought maybe Jalen Polk would get this boost with Drake May. In fact, he finds Kayshon Boutte on a touchdown, but Pop Douglas, Coop, it's by far the best target earner on the Patriots. He has 9 targets in 3 out of the last 4 weeks, goes over 20 PPR points this past week. I don't anticipate that most weeks, but I think Pop Douglas, there's no reason he can't be a wide receiver 3 moving forward with this functional offense and this sort of target share. He's a smaller guy, but he's in the slot. And we had a bunch of wide receiver 3 weeks last year. I think he had like 6 wide receiver 3 weeks in 2023. So for me, it's Pop Douglas. The guy for this week, though, if it's like, hey, I don't need somebody for the whole season. I got studs, but maybe I have CeeDee Lamb and he's on a bye week, then I'm looking at Michael Wilson because Michael Wilson, we've seen him play well, got a touchdown last week. And now with Marvin Harrison Jr. concussed, this is a week where you could see Michael Wilson seeing a 25% target share, like some wild projections here. Kyler already likes passing him the ball. He already leads Arizona wide receivers in targets and catches. We'll be interested to see what his target share is, but he's a nice spot start. Talk to me about Bub Means, Coop.
Right. And I mean, here's the thing. With a guy like Chris Olave, historically, according to my producer at SiriusXM, there's only been one player that has actually entered the concussion protocol on Sunday and been cleared by Thursday. And I'm starting to wonder if maybe that was some sort of clerical error or something, because it's driving me nuts. I've been trying to figure it out, and my producer has not gotten back to me yet. So I'm hoping to figure out who this mysterious player is and what the circumstances were, but unlikely for him to go. And we saw, Mason Tipton steps up when guys like Cedric Wilson or Rashid Shaheed are out, but at the split end position, Bub Means went in there and played the entire game for Chris Olave. So clearly they have different backups for different players. With Rashid Shaheed dealing with the knee, could see some Mason Tipton too, but no Patrick Surtain this week means that Bub Means could eat. And I'll throw a couple deeper stashes at you guys. Troy Franklin, I mentioned, got a bigger snap share. Devon Vele for the Broncos. We're still seeing how that shapes out. Also, Roman Wilson was active for the first time for the Steelers, and Van Jefferson went out there and earned himself 0 targets once again. So only a matter of time, I feel, before they just say, hey, you know what? If this guy's not getting any separation, he's not getting open, let's just give the kid a shot. We drafted him in the 3rd round for a reason, so I'm hoping to see more Roman Wilson. At the tight end position, Theo, at the very top, what are you doing off the wire?
Well, for me, it's Hunter Henry, because I see Hunter Henry going up against this matchup where Cole Kmet scores the 2 touchdowns. Hunter Henry gets like 3 catches, 40-something yards, but he also finds the end zone. A lot of times I like going with a tight end when he's attached to a rookie quarterback. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it's that safety valve mentality. And against the Jaguars this week, I think Hunter Henry's a guy that's going to put up like low-end tight end 1 is sort of how I would rank him. Yeah. I'm comfortable using Hunter Henry this week, and maybe more weeks than this, but certainly Jacksonville.
Yeah, I was really impressed by Jacksonville's willingness to go with a zone defense from the 3-yard line, which allowed literally everyone to be open. Cole Kmet to be wide open. So yeah,
they're a train wreck. They're a train wreck.
That is an interesting choice. But I mean, with the safeties, Cisco and Tony Johnson playing the way they are, pretty easy situation. And Hunter Henry actually has had some red zone prowess. He's good versus man to man. He scored 6 touchdowns last year when the team only threw 16. 6 touchdowns, tied for second most at tight end behind only Sam Laporta. So Hunter Henry definitely on the up and up. He's like my flat out ad, regardless of the situation you're in, both long term and short term. I want to see how this Drake May thing plays out. For short term, if you're looking for a 1-week starter, I mean, we just talked about Shaheed being out, Olave potentially being out. Juwan Johnson, here are the snap counts for this fella last few games: 35%, 41%, 50% in the first 3 games. Last 3 games, 69%, 79%, 77%. So his usage has ramped up. And again, you can only throw the ball to Bub Means and Mason Tipton so many times. Okay.
Yeah, that's true.
I think he's going to get a little bit of a boost this week. Colby Parkinson, another name. It's easy to say he's gotten 20 targets over the last 2 games because he has. I don't expect him to get 13 like he did last week. I don't really expect him to get 7 like he did the week before. This guy is he's the 2nd highest route participation of any tight end. I only Trey McBride. Like, he's out there. He's running around. And even if Cooper Kupp is back, still no Puka Nacua. So it could be a top 2 target on the team. So those are your spot starts. For the deep cuts, I got the deep boys. I'll go as deep as you want on these.
Well, I want to go, before you go with your deep sicko ones, I want to know about Jatavian Sanders, because Jatavian Sanders, anybody who's like a dynasty, into college prospects, like JT Sanders, there was a time where he was the number 2 tight end in this class, behind obviously Brock Bowers, and then he fell a little bit. Ben Sinnott goes on day 2, and JT Sanders falls to day 3, but JT Sanders is the first pick of the draft on day 3, the number 1 pick in the 4th round. Carolina obviously sat there overnight, thought about it, and said, we're going JT Sanders right here at the top, and sort of invisible to start the year. But Coopy's had 5 targets in week 5 and then 7 targets in week 6. So 12 targets over the last 2 weeks. Last week, he set career highs in terms of yardage, in terms of catches, in terms of targets. He seems to be trending up. This is obviously an offense. There's Xavier Legette. There's a ton of Chuba Hubbard, all the Deontay Johnson you could ever want. But it seems like Sanders could maybe carve out a role weekly.
Yeah, we had him in the DFS article this week. He was only 2,600. And you know that week 1, when Tommy Tremble was out, he played 75% of the snaps. Tommy Tremble was out with a concussion. Looked pretty bad, so I'm not sure if he's going to be back. But even if he is, Jatavian Sanders is the better pass catcher than Tommy Tremble. Ian Thomas was active this week. He's a blocker. Don't worry about him. He's no more threatening than Charlie Warner or Drew Sample, right? He's an inline blocking tight end. And Jatavian Sanders in Dynasty, my upside comps for him were guys like Hunter Henry and Zach Ertz. This guy has incredibly sure hands, didn't drop a single pass on 69 targets last year, runs crisp routes. The only thing he's missing is that high-end speed, but Zach Ertz had a 1,000-yard season. He's slow as hell. And this guy is not as slow as Ertz. He's not as slow as Jake Ferguson, who runs a 4.8. So Jatavian Sanders, he needs the targets, but he could potentially get him here. So that's a guy who has some DFS appeal once again and some start appeal. Some deeper stashes would be guys like Lucas Kroll. Again, we talked about how they're doing live tryouts over there with the Broncos. Greg Dulcich, full on healthy and active. And Lucas Kroll, actually, this past week, the week before, he led all the tight ends in routes run, but only had 11. This week, he ran 75% of the actual routes, got 4 targets. Who knows? Could emerge as a guy. Sean Payton said this offseason that people are going to know who 85 is, talking about Lucas Kroll. So he had a little steam this offseason. And then, of course, the deepest cut that I'm not sure we have introduced to this channel yet is my guy, Stone Smart. Yeah, let's do it, dude.
We talked about Lucas Kroll this summer together on a podcast, so we've been like kind of on the Kroll train. Stone Smart's sort of been, if anybody hasn't followed Coop's work from before, Stone Smart has been a guy that you've been on as sort of like your favorite deep cut tight end. Mm-hmm. Last year, you talked about him. He had that 1 week where he had that really long touchdown where you were like on cloud 9, and then
mentioned it in the Sirius XM that morning. I was like, Gerald Everett's banged up. Donald Parham is going to be stuck in line. Today's the day. We got lucky, obviously, on that one, but still.
Listen, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You called it, and he got the touchdown. But talk about Stone Smart. Like, what is it about him that you like? Is it the athleticism? Like, what about Stone Smart has stood out to you?
People always ask, they always ask in the offseason, they're like, who's your deepest tight ends? And obviously it was Lucas Kroll, the Warrior King, and Stone Cold Smart. And I say that because his middle name actually is Cole, Cole. So a little shout out to Stone Cold Steve Austin there with the name. But this is an athletic player. That's what we look for when we look down depth charts. We say, first and foremost, who's going to be a blocker? Who's going to be an extra tight end? Who's going to be a Darnell Washington or Michael Pruitt? Or who could actually come out and be the next Logan Thomas, right? A guy that was a quarterback that they converted into a tight end. And guess what Stone Smart is? He's a quarterback that they converted into a tight end. This guy played quarterback in high school. They converted him into a wide receiver. Now they converted the wide receiver into a tight end. He's learning the tight end position, but he has that athleticism. And you look around the depth chart, he's not behind Travis Kelce. He's behind Hayden Hurst and Will Disley. Will Disley has had 3 of the most insane leg injuries. The fact that he's playing football still is a miracle. He had an Achilles, he had an ACL, he had a broken leg. This is not an explosive player. He's more of an inline blocker. And sure, like Stone Smart might not even do anything right now because Will Disley, they might just lean into him with his blocking and everything. But this is the chance with Hayden Hurst dealing with a groin injury for him to actually get some looks, and we can see what this guy can do. Again, we saw him rip off the big one. I'd love to see him get out and get some snaps in the slot, maybe show that he could be a Logan Thomas in this league. And again, we're talking deep dino, but hey, you know what? Names have to be mentioned. Guys come from nowhere all the time. Stone Smart, Lucas Kroll. That's it.
Love it. And if you let us know your favorite waiver wire additions right here in the comments. If you're enjoying watching videos with Coop and I right here on Redraft and 5, make sure you're subscribing to the channel. It costs you nothing and it helps us really grow. And make sure you like this video as well. We're going to be back next week with 2 videos. This week only 1, Coop, but it was a lot of fun. Let's crush it in waivers this week, and let's crush it for the rest of the season. Only 2 teams on bye this week, none on week 8. Coop, it's time to get some W's.
We're so back, dude. We're so back. And also 2 Monday Night Football games again. I'll tell you, it's funny, Theo, you start looking around the schedule, and hockey's back this week, only 2 bye weeks. Next week, when basketball's back, the NFL said no bye weeks this week. They're not letting anybody steal any of our viewers. Let's go. Football drives the bus.
Let's go. We'll see you back here next week.